In the annals of World War II, few campaigns are as storied or as pivotal as the Battle for Guadalcanal. This remote island in the Solomon Islands became the stage for a fierce struggle between Allied and Japanese forces, a struggle that would determine the course of the war in the Pacific. At the heart of this conflict was Henderson Field, a vital airstrip that allowed the Allies to project air power across the region. And among the aircraft that defended this crucial base were the P-400 Airacobras of the 67th Fighter Squadron, known as the Fighting Cox. The P-400 Airacobra was not the most celebrated fighter of the war. In fact, it was often maligned for its shortcomings, particularly its inability to perform at high altitudes. Yet, in the hands of determined pilots and under the right circumstances, it proved to be a formidable weapon. Imagine trying to climb a mountain with a bicycle built for flat roads. Well, that was the P-400 trying to chase Japanese bombers in the skies. But down low, where the air was thick and the fighting fierce, it found its calling. This is the story of how the men of the 67th Fighter Squadron turned a seemingly inadequate aircraft into a key player in one of the most critical campaigns of World War II. To understand the significance of the P-400 at Guadalcanal, we must first delve into its origins and the arduous journey that brought it to the Pacific theater. The WWII P-39 Airacobra was a unique aircraft designed with an innovative layout that placed the engine behind the cockpit, allowing for a powerful 37mm cannon to be mounted in the nose. This design promised heavy firepower and good maneuverability, making it an attractive option for the United States Army Air Corps. However, a critical decision was made to remove the turbo supercharger, prioritizing low-altitude performance over high-altitude capabilities. This choice would later prove to be a significant limitation, but at the time, it aligned with the Army's focus on ground support roles. In 1940, the British Purchasing Commission, desperate to bolster the Royal Air Force amid the escalating conflict in Europe, ordered 675 P-39s, designated as the Airacobra I. These aircraft were modified to British specifications, most notably replacing the 37mm cannon with a 20mm Hispano cannon and equipping them with 4.303 caliber machine guns in the wings. The British hoped for a fighter capable of 400 miles per hour, with a ceiling of 36,000 feet and a range of 1,000 miles. But when the first Airacobras arrived in Britain in July 1941, they fell short of expectations. Testing by the British Aeroplane and Armament Experimental Establishment revealed a top speed of only 359 miles per hour, with poor climb rates and inadequate performance above 15,000 feet. The Airacobra I was deemed unsuitable for the high-altitude dogfights common in the European theater, and only 80 were briefly operated by the Royal Air Force's 601 Squadron before most were redirected elsewhere. Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the United States Army Air Forces requisitioned 200 of these British-ordered aircraft, redesignating them as P-400s. These planes were sent to the Pacific, where the need for fighters was urgent as Japanese forces advanced through the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. The P-400, with its 20mm cannon and distinctive armament, was thrust into a theater where its low-altitude strengths could be tested, but its weaknesses would also be exposed. The 67th Fighter Squadron, part of the 347th Fighter Group, was one of the units tasked with operating these P-400s. Activated in January 1941 at Harding Army Airfield in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the squadron initially flew obsolete Seversky P-35 fighters. Nicknamed the Fighting Cox, they were a spirited group, eager to prove themselves. On January 23, 1942, the squadron embarked on a grueling journey aboard the transport ship Thomas A. Barry, departing from Brooklyn, New York, bound for the Pacific. After a 5-week voyage, they arrived in Australia, and on March 5, 1942, they reached New Caledonia, a strategic Allied base in the South Pacific. In New Caledonia, the men of the 67th faced their first major challenge, assembling their P400s from crates. The aircraft had been shipped disassembled, and to their dismay, there were no standard instructions for assembly. The mechanics had only manuals for the American P-39, which differed in several key aspects from the P-400. Imagine trying to assemble a complex puzzle with half the instructions missing. That was the task facing Master Sergeant Robert Foy and his ground crew. It took 29 days to piece together 30 airframes. Working in primitive conditions with no spare parts, repairs often relied on cannibalizing parts from damaged aircraft, a practice that would continue throughout their time at Guadalcanal. Mechanical issues were rampant, with miswired electrical circuits and missing components like propellers causing delays. Despite these hurdles, the squadron managed to prepare their aircraft, and on March 28, 1942, Captain Dale Brannon, known as DD, led the first test flight, a testament to the crew's ingenuity. As the Japanese advanced through the Solomon Islands, the need for air support at Guadalcanal became critical. On August 7, 1942, the United States launched Operation Watchtower, the invasion of Guadalcanal, marking the first major Allied offensive in the Pacific. The capture of Henderson Field, a partially completed Japanese airstrip, was a key objective as it provided a base for Allied air operations. To support this effort, the 67th Fighter Squadron was ordered to deploy to Guadalcanal. On August 21, 1942, the first 5 P-400s, equipped with additional long-range fuel tanks, took off from New Caledonia. Guided by a B-17 from the 11th Bombardment Group, they flew to Afato, then to Espiritu Santo, covering 350 kilometers before landing at Henderson Field on August 22, 1942. By August 27, 14 P-400s were operational, joining Marine and Navy squadrons as part of the Cactus Air Force, named after the codename for Guadalcanal. The P-400 Airacobra was a distinctive aircraft, its design shaped by both innovation and compromise. Its semi-monocoque fuselage, constructed primarily of aluminum alloy, was sleek yet sturdy, measuring just over 30 feet in length. The low-mounted, cantilever wings spanned 34 feet, providing a stable platform for low-altitude operations. The tricycle landing gear, with the main gear retracting into the wings and the nose gear into the fuselage, offered improved ground handling and visibility during takeoff and landing. At the heart of the P-400 was the Allison V171035V 12 liquid-cooled piston engine, delivering 1,150 horsepower. This drove a 3-bladed, constant-speed propeller via a 10-foot-long shaft, a unique feature that allowed the nose to house the aircraft's heavy armament. The P-400's armament was formidable for its time. A single 20mm Hispano L1 cannon, firing through the propeller hub, carried 60 rounds, providing significant firepower. This was complemented by 2.50 caliber Browning M, 2 machine guns in the nose, and 4.303 caliber Browning machine guns in the wings. The aircraft could also carry up to 500 pounds of bombs, making it versatile for ground attack roles. Its maximum speed was approximately 359 miles per hour at 14,000 feet, but performance dropped sharply above this altitude due to the lack of a turbo supercharger. The service ceiling was around 24,000 feet, and its range was about 650 miles with internal fuel. The climb rate, at roughly 2,000 feet per minute, was adequate for low-altitude operations, but insufficient for intercepting high-flying bombers. The P-400's design had several notable features. The mid-mounted engine, located behind the cockpit, freed up the nose for the cannon, giving pilots a concentrated field of fire. The tricycle landing gear was a modern touch, rare for fighters of the era, and made taxiing on rough airstrips like Henderson Field easier. However, the aircraft had its quirks. the British high-pressure oxygen systems were incompatible with American equipment, limiting pilots' ability to operate at higher altitudes. And let's be honest, trying to breathe through a mismatched oxygen system is like trying to sip a milkshake through a coffee stirrer. Not exactly ideal in a combat zone. Mechanical reliability was another issue, with frequent problems stemming from the hasty assembly in New Caledonia. Electrical systems were prone to failure, and the lack of spare parts meant ground crews had to get creative, often scavenging from wrecked aircraft. The P400's performance limitations were stark. Without a turbo supercharger, the engine struggled above 14,000 feet, where Japanese bombers often operated. This made the P400 a poor match for the nimble Mitsubishi A6M0, which could climb and maneuver with ease at higher altitudes. The 20mm cannon, while powerful, had a low rate of fire and limited ammunition, requiring precise aim in combat. Still, at low altitudes, the P400's heavy armament and sturdy construction made it a capable platform for ground attack, a role it would soon embrace at Guadalcanal. Upon arriving at Henderson Field, the 67th Fighter Squadron was thrust into the crucible of combat. Their first engagement came on August 23, 1942, during the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. Captain Dale Brannan and Second Lieutenant Deltas Fincher encountered Japanese Zeros, managing to shoot down one, marking the squadron's first victory. However, the P400's limitations became painfully clear on August 30, 1942, when they faced a large formation of Zeros from the Japanese carriers Shokaku and Suikaku. In this battle, the squadron lost 4 P400s, with the Zeros' superior climb rate and maneuverability proving overwhelming. Marine commanders, frustrated by the P400's inability to intercept high-altitude bombers, initially dismissed them as practically worthless, and whispers of cowardice unfairly shadowed the squadron. Faced with these challenges, the 67th adapted their tactics. Recognizing that the P400 was no match for Zeros in dogfights, they shifted to ground attack and reconnaissance roles. By September 1942, the squadron was flying up to 5 missions a day, targeting Japanese troops, defenses, and supply barges along the coast. The P400's 20mm cannon and machine guns were devastating against ground targets, and pilots developed a low-altitude dive bombing technique to maximize accuracy. On September 2, 1942, P400s from the newly established Fighter 1 airstrip, nicknamed the Cow Pasture, attacked Japanese barges at Tasimboko, disrupting supply lines critical to the enemy's operations. The squadron's defining moment came during the Battle of Edson's Ridge on September 14, 1942. As Japanese forces launched a major assault on the American perimeter, 3 P400s, piloted by Captain John Thompson, First Lieutenant Richard Davis, and Second Lieutenant Brian Brown, conducted low-altitude strafing and bombing runs. Their attacks inflicted heavy casualties, with an estimated 600 Japanese troops lost, breaking the back of the assault. General Alexander Vandegrift, commander of the Marine Forces, later remarked that these P400 attacks just saved Guadalcanal. Captain Thompson's leadership in this mission earned him the Navy Cross, a testament to the squadron's courage and impact. Life at Guadalcanal was grueling for the 67th Fighter Squadron. The tropical environment brought relentless rain, mud, and diseases like malaria, dysentery, and typhus. Pilots and ground crews lived on meager rations, often Australian-supplied bread riddled with weevils, which they ate after picking out the pests. Supply shortages were a constant issue, with no spare parts available for the P400s. Ground crews, led by men like Master Sergeant Robert Foy, worked miracles to keep the aircraft flying, often using parts salvaged from wrecks. The P400s themselves were prone to mechanical failures, with issues like faulty propellers and electrical systems adding to the squadron's challenges. One pilot quipped that keeping a P400 airworthy was like trying to keep a temperamental mule on a tightrope, a delicate balancing act. Despite these hardships, the 67th continued to make significant contributions. They escorted SBD Dauntless dive bombers, conducted reconnaissance missions, and targeted the so-called Tokyo Express, Japanese supply convoys that ran under cover of darkness. On November 7, 1942, 8 P-400s and P-39s attacked a Tokyo Express convoy, with First Lieutenant Robert Ferguson shooting down a Japanese roof floatplane, one of 3 victories credited to the squadron that day. However, the P-400's days were numbered. By mid-November 1942, no P-400s remained airworthy at Guadalcanal, worn out by relentless operations and lack of maintenance. By February 1943, the type was withdrawn from combat in the South Pacific, replaced by more capable aircraft like the P-38 Lightning. The 67th Fighter Squadron's pilots demonstrated remarkable skill and adaptability. Captain Dale Brannan, who was wounded on September 12, 1942, was credited with 2 solo zero victories and 1 shared with Delta's Fincher. First Lieutenant William Fiedler, who later flew P-39s, became an ace, showcasing the potential of the Airacobra family when used effectively. The squadron's ground crews, working in appalling conditions, were the unsung heroes, ensuring the P-400s could fly mission after mission despite the odds. The story of the P-400 Airacobras at Guadalcanal is one of adaptation and resilience. Despite being ill-suited for the high-altitude air combat they were initially intended for, the pilots of the 67th Fighter Squadron found a way to leverage their aircraft's strengths. By shifting to ground attack roles, they provided crucial support to the Marines on the ground and helped secure a vital victory in the Pacific theater. The P-400 may not have been the star of World War II aviation, but its contribution to the Guadalcanal campaign was undeniable. No P-400s survive today, their metal frames lost to time or scrapped in the jungles of the Solomon Islands. Yet, their legacy lives on in the annals of military history, a reminder that even the most unlikely tools can become instruments of victory when wielded with skill and determination. Hopefully, this tale gives the P-400 and the Fighting Cox the recognition they deserve for their role in turning the tide at Guadalcanal.